Hi, I'm Kristen Oakes-White.
And I'm Avery Davidson. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together every week.
Well, right now we're coming to you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We are here following Louisiana Farm Bureau leaders, farmers, and ranchers from across the state as they meet with Louisiana's congressional delegation. It's spring break in most places, but here in D.C., it's a really interesting time with a new administration and a new farm bill on the horizon.
The folks from Louisiana got quite a surprise up here as a few inches of snow greeted most on the day they arrived. The snowbound streets stopped bus travel and traffic in some places, but did not stop these scheduled Capitol Hill visits. Labor concerns, tax issues, regulations, and of course the Farm Bill were all topics covered during the two-day event. Prior to the Hill visits, experts from the American Farm Bureau Federation briefed the Louisiana group with some insight on the current issues. In fact, we're shooting the show right now from the American Farm Bureau Federation headquarters. And we'll hear from some of those AFBF staff a little bit later on in the show.
Also a little later in the show, we'll catch up with Carl Wiggers, who followed one farm family from their home to meet their congressional representative here in D.C. and all of the issues they had to talk about.
Well, this nation's capital, along with one state, numerous cities, universities, and a street in almost every city in the country is named after one man, the first president, General George Washington. With so much named after him and so many accomplishments, it's not very well known what he liked to do best.
TWILA's Neil Melanson traveled just outside of D.C. to George Washington's home, a little farm called Mount Vernon.
Statesman, General, President. George Washington is revered in American history as the father of our nation through the many roles he played there at the beginning. Among other things, there is a city, state, and even a prominent monument dedicated to him. But what do we know about Washington as a person? That he chopped down a cherry tree?
No, he didn't.
That he threw a silver dollar across the Potomac?
No, that didn't happen either.
What about surviving the winter at Valley Forge?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, at least we got something right from school. But here at his home in Mount Vernon, you'd have to wonder about Washington the man, especially as you look out over all the farmland he had, about 3,200 acres under crop, according to our expert here, Sam Murphy.
If he rode up right now and you said, General, describe yourself in one word, he's going to say farmer.
Washington's love of agriculture never really left him. In fact, as president, he continued to come up with innovations to help American agriculture and his own farm back at home. In fact, this grist mill behind me is his very own innovation, a brand new way of separating the wheat from the chaff.
He'll divide the 4 working farms into 7 fields. 2 fields in wheat, his new cash crop. A field in corn intercropped with potatoes, carrots. There are a lot of mouths to feed here at Mount Vernon. There'll be fields in cereal grains, rye, oats, barley, fields in green manures. These are plants like clover, cowpeas, buckwheat, turnips, things that you grow, plow back into the soil gets healthier. You'll know them today as nitrogen fixers. And last but not least, Washington has anywhere from 600 to 1,000 head of cattle, of what he calls white cattle. We call them sheep, that put into pasture grass fields will graze the pasture grass, pull the grass up by the roots, and leave behind a manure that doesn't need composting.
Beyond the crops grown here at Mount Vernon and the innovations that made life easier, like this grist mill, Washington was thinking beyond the bounds of his own farm. The vertical integration and global trade that modern agriculture depends on was pioneered here, including some commodities we raise in Louisiana today.
Washington's shipping flour to Portugal. The Portuguese are sending him Lisbon salt. He's taking the salt and salt packing the 1.5 million fish he's pulling out of the Potomac every year, which are headed, gutted, put into barrels, salt packed to be shipped down to the sugarcane plantations in the West Indies.
Washington's vision included even more, though. At his farm, he pioneered 60 different crop varieties with the idea that his large farm could take on the risks that smaller farmers further west could not. Experiments in varieties, soil types, and yield led to the creation of modern agriculture science that ultimately developed the USDA almost 100 years later. It's a legacy that's still going on today, and these 9th graders from Minnesota are getting a lesson in their government class firsthand.
So we look at part of the innovation of Washington. We looked at how he changed soil. We looked at the innovation of the grist mill. We looked at slavery and although it was slavery, but they were skilled slaves rather than unskilled. We looked at that difference.
And sure, they're learning about the scholar, the general, and the president, but here at Mount Vernon, they're getting to see where all the food and fiber they have and enjoy today were first planted, from the farmer, George Washington. For This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, I'm Neil Melanson.
Now, Neil just visited the farm itself, but there is a lot more to Mount Vernon, including Washington's Manor House, a slave monument, and a museum. The whole site is definitely worth a trip down there to follow in the footsteps of our nation's first president and such a huge contributor to modern agriculture. For more information on Mount Vernon or to plan a trip there, you can log on to our website at twilatv.org.
In keeping with his agrarian roots, George Washington, along with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, had a great vision: a botanic garden to collect, grow, and distribute plants that might contribute to the welfare of the American people. In 1820, that vision became a reality with the establishment of a garden on the grounds of the Capitol building for the Columbian Institute for the Promotion of Arts and Sciences. Today, that mission continues as the United States Botanic Garden.
Washington, D.C. can be a cold, intense place, literally when there is snow on the ground and when you're only steps away from the Capitol. But there's a place you can break the tension and the ice. This glass greenhouse is the United States Botanic Garden, the oldest public garden in North America and a brainchild of our nation's founding fathers.
These are people that had plantations nearby in Virginia, and so agriculture was very much part of who they were.
Bill McLaughlin is the curator of plants at the U.S. Botanic Garden. He says one of the goals of this garden is to keep visitors as connected to plants as our founding fathers.
We're beautiful, yes, but tying plants and people together is who we are, and plants and agriculture are a huge part of that.
There is no denying the beauty these plants bring to the nation's capital, but McLaughlin says it's here to bring people in for the scientific message and mission.
Here at the Botanic Garden, we do that by tying the lives of people to plants every day by looking at the cultural significance of plants, medicinal value of plants, economic importance of plants, and that's why the great hall that you come into, the very first place you come into at the garden is filled with economic plants. Everything from bananas to chocolate to vanilla, you name it.
Even a plant very well known in Louisiana, the loquat or Japanese plum.
From my trips down to Louisiana in the past, I remember seeing those in many courtyards, and they're just a beautiful landscape tree. Now they're not hardy outdoors here in D.C., so we have to bring them inside. But this one's actually full of small kind of yellow-brown fruit. And if no one's ever tasted them, they're absolutely delicious. And they're very strongly important in Japan.
Just one room away, another familiar tree.
This tree right here looks like something that would grow in my grandmother's yard.
Yeah, if you're down in the deep south and Louisiana would count, this would be one of the plants you could grow. Up here in D.C., we can grow maybe one or two varieties that are real hardy, but maybe not the best tasting figs.
But the ones from this tree do taste great. This is the LSU purple fig, bred by the LSU Ag Center in 1991. If you're looking for something just as sweet and economically important to Louisiana, you will find sugarcane in the U.S. Botanic Garden. It's not among the cacao trees with the orange fruit we use to make chocolate, nor is it by the banana trees, both of which reside in the front hall of economically important plants. It's growing with a group of plants used for medicine.
Sugar as a topical has antibacterial activity. You wouldn't think that. But sugar, like salt, is a concentrated chemical, and that can make it disfavorable for certain organisms. So it has been used topically actually as an antiseptic.
A reminder that this place is not just a beautiful garden, but a repository of science, knowledge, and history. Some of the plants here, especially in the Hawaiian exhibit, are no longer found in the wild. In fact, this plant here with the broad green leaves now only exists in 2 gardens in the world. This is one of them.
Most of them have some sort of vivipary.
That's why PhD students like Richard Hodel travel here to learn firsthand about plants he can see nowhere else.
You know, it's critically important to keep these records around for agriculture, for future generations, all sorts of things like that.
Those are heavy concepts, vitally important to keeping people, well, alive. So maybe the beauty does serve a purpose. To relieve the tension and renew.
One thing that you can't create by programming is a feel. We have this sort of regenerating openness, and when people come in, they immediately experience the space and go take a deep breath. It smells a little bit different in every room you move through in here. So every room people move through, it's a different experience, different light, temperature, and odors. It's wonderful and a great place to work too.
A visit to the U.S. Botanic Garden can set you on the path to gardening at home, as it already has for Kristen Oak. She loved it there. Right now, the newest exhibit is called You Can Grow It. It's there to answer visitors' top plant questions. It's really cool, and between now and October 15th, there will be special displays and workshops to help you develop a green thumb, because we all are not born with one. To learn more about the You Can Grow It exhibit and the U.S. Botanic Garden, visit our website at twilatv.org.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, the new Farm Bill is currently being discussed on Capitol Hill, and members of Louisiana Farm Bureau are definitely interested in how it's taking shape. John Newton, American Farm Bureau's Director of Market Intelligence, addressed the group, and they visited with their representatives to brief them on where the new Farm Bill stands. The bill is expected to be crafted next year and represents a $1 trillion investment over 10 years. 80% of the bill is nutrition programs, including benefits for the elderly and school lunch programs. In the previous Farm Bill, the House attempted to split those nutrition programs and the portion dealing directly with agriculture, while the Senate kept it as one. Newton says splitting the bill would almost certainly be a death blow for the agriculture portion, which would be bad for farmers and consumers.
Since 1973, we've had those two programs aligned and joined together to stress the importance of farm programs and nutrition programs. And it's really important to get the support in the House of Representatives.
The Farm Bill is one of the main issues discussed here at the nation's capital, but it's not the only one. No one knows the issues that affect a farmer better than a farmer. That's what makes a trip like this so important. TWILA's Carl Wiggers shows us what grassroots participation is all about as he follows an Avoyelles Parish farmer from his rice fields to Capitol Hill.
Last year,
while Philip Lamartiniere checks his rice fields north of Marksville, he cannot help but think about all that is happening 1,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. That's because today's farmers are so heavily impacted by the laws and regulations that come from our nation's capital.
I think it's very important that you be active and go see your congressman every chance you get.
That's exactly what Lamartiniere and other farmers from across the state are doing here in Washington, D.C.
If you don't voice your concerns and the wants and the needs that you have, no one else will. We got to tell them what we need, and I think that they want to hear from us.
The best part of any of my day is when good Louisiana folks come to see me. We have to do what we have to do up here on committee meetings, and that's our job. But when I can just relax a little bit, have good conversation with good Louisiana people, that's a good day.
5th District Representative and a member of the House Ag Committee, Dr. Ralph Abraham, depends heavily on these visits. Not just for the company, but also to learn what is important to his constituents.
It's a teaching moment. We can debate, we can converse about issues such as the Farm Bill, such as the Affordable Care Act repeal and replace. So it's a learning experience on both sides, I hope.
Without provisions in the current Farm Bill, Lamartiniere and many other rice farmers would not still be able to grow the food that is on our tables. Because of this, the next Farm Bill was the first thing for he and Abraham to discuss on Capitol Hill.
It works for rice. If it wouldn't be for that PLC program that we have now, we wouldn't be farming rice. It just, there's no way. Current prices are at or below the cost of production right now.
PLC stands for Price Loss Coverage. It's the safety net built into the last Farm Bill to ensure that when prices drop below the cost of production, farms do not go out of business and your food supply remains stable and secure.
The Farm Bill is going to get done, and again, hopefully by December 2018, we'll have it in place. On the tax, we have tax reform that will happen this year. We have regulatory reform that has already started to happen with the relook at the WOTUS bill. Hopefully that's going to go away permanently, and I think it will.
Also important to rice producers is where their rice is sold on the world's market.
We need some markets. We need Cuba. That would be a quick fix for Louisiana. We need to maintain the markets that we have in Mexico, NAFTA. I know the administration talks about reopening some of these trade agreements and trying to make them better. Well, I'm all for making things better, but let's not lose what we got today. And we need Mexico, we need Canada. We're an export market. We need to be able to export the crop that we produce.
Meetings like this are so powerful and a great way for farmers to advocate on behalf of the industry that means so much to them, their communities, and the entire country.
It shows him that we're just as concerned here at home.
In all, Louisiana Farm Bureau leaders met with both state senators and the offices of every district's representative to talk about the issues that are important to them And while it's great to visit the Capitol for the experience of being here, you don't have to travel across the country to let your congressman know what is important to you. That can happen with a simple phone call, an email, a town hall visit, or by visiting them at their local offices back in Louisiana. For a link to all the information you need to reach your representative and to see how you can get more involved in this process, visit our website at twilatv.org.
Tax reform is another issue Congress will consider in the coming months. Louisiana Farm Bureau leaders learned about the Republican plan to restructure the tax code from American Farm Bureau tax specialist Pat Wolf. Wolf says in any change to the tax code, there will be winners and losers. The American Farm Bureau has not yet taken a position on the much talked about border adjustment tax, which would impose a tax on goods where they're used rather than on where they are produced. Regardless, Wolf says those involved in agriculture must study tax proposals carefully to ensure farms and ranches can continue to support local economies.
A robust agricultural economy boosts rural communities. When farmers are doing well, when they have money to make purchases and upgrade their equipment and build new buildings, that's every dollar spent is a dollar that's invested in rural America.
Wolf also says the bill that House Republicans are working on lowers tax rates, but also changes deductions, so it's unclear right now as to how that could affect agriculture and rural communities.
Still to come on this special edition of TWILA from our nation's capital, visits with a couple of doctors are the prescription for food security.
And later in the show, does this young lady have a future in politics? She's already cast one congressional vote. Stay with us.
Before you sweeten your morning joe, before the icing on the cake, before the sugar hits the shelf, it begins with a family of sugarcane farmers dedicated to growing Louisiana for more than 220 years. The Sugarcane Growers of Louisiana, making life sweeter, naturally.
Sugarcane, sweet sugarcane.
I now hope they're fighting today.
I hope they are. Put a Dorito on here.
I got a fish, I got a fish.
Find your place in the country and the lender who can get you there. Find Louisiana Land Bank. Financing for country homes, recreational property, farms and ranches, and agribusiness.
We continue our special edition of TWILA from our nation's capital by taking you inside one of the highlights of this trip, a meeting with Louisiana's senior senator.
Senator Bill Cassidy spent nearly an hour speaking with and listening to the Louisiana Farm Bureau leaders who made the trip here to Washington, D.C. While they did talk about issues like the upcoming farm bill, tax reform, and labor issues, this meeting allowed Senator Cassidy to get an in-depth understanding of what they each do back home on the farm. Cassidy says meetings like this give him a strong appreciation for what these farmers and ranchers do back home, but as for the average consumer,
I'm not sure they do, but in one sense maybe that's not bad, because that means that our farmers and ranchers are so good that people can take it for granted. Not that they should, but it does tell us that our farmers and ranchers are incredibly talented people.
That's especially true following the fires in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado. Members of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Board's Executive Committee met briefly with Louisiana's junior senator, Senator John Kennedy. Louisiana Farm Bureau President Ronnie Anderson says it was a very good and productive meeting. While the meeting with Senator Cassidy was very formal, in a very formal setting there in the Senate building, Louisiana Farm Bureau leaders had a chance to sit down and break bread with one of their congressmen.
Louisiana's 5th District Congressman Ralph Abraham and his wife Diane had dinner with Louisiana Farm Bureau President Ronnie Anderson and more than 40 volunteers and staff. Abraham's district is the largest agricultural district in the country, and it's also one of the most diverse when it comes to crops. That's why Congressman Abraham has a person on staff who specializes in agricultural issues. Ted Verrill. Verrill calls the farmers and ranchers America's thin green line, a play off the term used for law enforcement because of the importance of agriculture to our country's prosperity.
It's a matter of national security. More and more there's really two threats that have been emerging. One is that food will come in from overseas tainted or tampered with, but also that pathogens will come in from overseas, either intentionally or unintentionally, and impact our ability to produce our own food. They're both grave threats, and they're things that Congress has been taking very seriously.
Prior to joining Congressman Abraham's staff, Verrill worked for Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas, who authored a bill to extend credit to Cuba to buy agricultural products.
Still to come on TWILA, the vote that may change the course of one young lady's political career.
But first, we go on a virtual sightseeing tour of our nation's capital via social media. Trending on TWILA is up next.
This week we're bringing you a special D.C. edition of Trending on TWILA. While we were in our nation's capital, Louisiana Farm Bureau members shared lots of their favorite moments on social media.
Between the congressional visits and business meetings on Capitol Hill, Farm Bureau leaders also took time to soak up all of the tourist attractions here in the D.C. area.
The trip began with a guided tour of D.C. after dark. From the White House to the Lincoln Memorial, Farm Bureau members got a chance to see and hear the legends behind some of the nation's most famous monuments and landmarks. Snowstorm Stella even joined the tour, but the sleet and snow did not stop these folks from snapping some gorgeous photos during the Twilight tour.
Some of our young farmers and ranchers stopped by the new Trump Hotel, located inside the old Washington D.C. post office. Marcy and Ramsey Keller said they were going inside to look for President Trump. I wonder if they ever found him.
I know someone who did, but we'll talk about that later. The National Air and Space Museum was another popular attraction here in D.C. Jim Harper posted this photo of the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane inside the museum. I went to the museum that same day. It's outside the Dulles Airport, so it takes about 45 minutes to get to it. Worth every minute, worth every penny of that Uber ride out there, because for one, that the SR-71 is an amazing jet to see in person. The whole history behind it, what Skunk Works did to have to build it. But also, they had a little Louisiana tie there. You can show them the picture, right, Kristen?
Right.
Okay, yeah, this is from inside of the Air and Space Museum there at Dulles Airport. That is a crop duster from Monroe, Louisiana, and that is the company which led to Delta Airlines. So, really cool.
It's interesting. It looks like you and Neil really enjoyed the trip.
We geeked out a little.
Well, D.C. is also home to some of the best restaurants in the country, from the saucy Philomenia's lasagna to a Brazilian beef meat coma. Louisiana farmers and ranchers are experts on finding the best food in the capital city, and they posted lots of photos to make everyone hungry on social media.
But it was Stella, the snowstorm, who stole the show on social media this week. Winter Storm Stella covered the capital with a blanket of white snow, and these Louisiana visitors captured plenty of photos and videos to share on Facebook.
And someone else even joined in the action and on the snow pose craze. He even attempted to start a snowball fight in front of the Capitol, and Avery tisk tisk.
It was the smallest snowball on the planet. In fact, one of my friends posted under there, "Go Go Gadget Snowball," because I was wearing my trench coat at the time. Now, I mentioned that I was going to talk about someone else who saw the president. Our graphic designer, Monica Velasquez, standing outside of a restaurant today, gets video of the motorcade going on by.
We got that? Roll that video.
Roll that beautiful bean bush.
Well, moving on to this week's trending trivia. Last time we asked you, most farm-related fatalities are caused by which accident? And the correct answer is B, tractor overturn. This week's trending trivia question is, which pet lived in the White House with Presidents John Quincy Adams and Herbert Hoover? Is it A, a hamster, B, a parrot, or C, an alligator? To enter this week's trending trivia contest, simply log on to your Facebook or Twitter account and post your answer with the hashtag TWILATrivia, or you can always submit your answer online at twilatv.org.
There is a lot to learn here in Washington, D.C., and on this trip, I learned something new, that if you are under the age of 15, you can go onto the House floor and cast a vote for a congressman.
And that's exactly what Mary Martin got to do. Mary is the daughter of Louisiana Farm Bureau Information and Public Relations Director Carrie Martin. Congressman Ralph Abraham brought Mary out onto the House floor, introduced her to Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, as well as several other members of Congress. After the vote, Congressman Abraham, Mary, and a very proud papa all posed for a picture.
It was really a neat thing to see. I was there and absolutely loved it. Well, that does it for this edition of TWILA. Before we go, I'd like to thank John Earl and the staff here at the American Farm Bureau Federation for allowing us to shoot our show right here. The view, absolutely amazing, and it took a lot of work to make that happen. So John Earl, thank you very much.
Well, to watch all of the stories from here in D.C. and check out a few extras like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and check out our stories on Snapchat.
For all of us here at TWILA, thank you for watching. We hope to see you again right here next week.